This is Porsche's new generation 911. And since you guys are Porsche enthusiasts, you know which generation it is and what the code name is, right?
The 992 is trying to strengthen its supercar quotient, and in the process it's become even more confounding and enigmatic.
Everybody else, the non-Porsche enthusiasts, are gonna look at this and say, what? This is all new? But the Porsche enthusiasts can step in here and tell them that this is, in fact, harking back to the 911s of the 60s and 70s. Look at that crease on the hood, which runs all the way to the windscreen. Then there's the chin, which is slightly more square and more manly, you would say. And the nose just looks longer, even though the car's length hasn't changed all that much.
The hood stretches further into the chin. The lines are more square and sharp. But in true Porsche fashion, it is evolution, not revolution, except here.
This is where Porsche has made it so much easier for anyone to recognize the new 911, and that's because of that wide LED bar running right across the width. And talking about width, this is wider than before. In fact, now there's only one width on the 911, whereas earlier it would be different between the standard 911 and the four-wheel drive versions. So yeah, this does look chunky. And a little bit of detailing here that must be highlighted. If you see the slats here, that's where it breathes from for the cooling. There are 9 of them here, and there are 2 in the middle, which looks like an 11. Well, there are lots of changes under the skin, but very subtle ones. And one more that I'm going to highlight is the wheel sizes. There's 20 inches up front and 21 inches at the rear. This wasn't the norm with Porsches before, but with this 911, the objective has changed somewhat. And that is to make the 911 that much easier to live with, that much more comfortable to be in, while still being sporty, of course.
And it is trying to be more welcoming too.
You're going to be spending more on your 911 now, and you'd want to feel some of that specialness on the inside as well. And surely Porsche have done lots to make it feel more modern and yet feel more classical. Like with the outside, the design on the inside harks back to the 911s of the 60s and the 70s, which is why this dash design is so clean and slim. And in that though is a lot of modern stuff, like for instance the center display is a 10.2-inch screen, but the interesting bits are these 2 7-inch screens that flank the center play here, which is an analog rev counter. The screens on the sides, those are completely customizable. These mimic the 5 dials that the 911s used to have earlier, but just scroll away and it can change to whatever you want. It can be an extension of the navigation that you're getting here, and just makes it really convenient to use. But there is one small thing: when you're driving around, you'll find that the steering wheel rim gets in the way of seeing what's on display on some of those dials, and which means you have to kind of toggle around. And as standard in the 911, there is also a ladies shaver. And that's referring to the new gear lever that you have, which is really a small little dainty unit here to just select which drive mode you're in. And along with this cleanup in terms of design, you also get the lift mode switch up here on the center console, along with the settings for the suspension, all stacked up here. So it's been cleaned up considerably and it looks and feels good. But I do feel that it could do with a bit more of that specialness in terms of highlights like chrome inserts. This just feels a little somber to me right now.
You could call it serious, and it is very serious about safety.
Talking about everyday use, the 911 has one new standard feature: a wet wheel. It has a sensor in the front wheel arch. Yes, that one. It listens for the sound of water on the road and then warns the driver that he might want to switch to the wet mode.
The rain mode warns all the electronic systems to be more watchful and careful.
Now for 911s, the term turbo was a very special one. But the fact is, the 911 that we're driving right now, the Carrera S, is also a turbo. This is a 3-liter flat-six twin turbo engine, which has been seen before but has been thoroughly reworked for the 992. Are you ready to geek out? Well, for starters, the turbochargers are now laid out in a format that they spin in opposite directions. The one on this bank and the one on this bank They're just spinning in different directions. Why? Because it's more efficient. Then there are the intake valves. These don't open the same amount, so on the same cylinder, the two valves will open to different degrees. 2 mm on one and 4.5 mm on the other. Why? Because it improves the intake, it creates swirl, and that makes the engine more efficient. The engine has revised manifolds, its intercoolers are sitting in a different place now, just under the deck at the rear. So the path is shortened for the airflow, so responsiveness is better, the wastegate is electronically controlled, so everything is focused towards making this more responsive. I am not going to argue with the fact that the 911 is something that you can drive easily every day. And that's been true for all 911s, but this just feels that much better. I don't know how they do it. Headline figures, of course, the 911 is now 0.4 seconds faster to 100, and it makes 30 PS more than before. The improvement in performance is also down to the gearbox. There's a new 8-speed dual clutch which uses shorter ratios for the first 3 gears, which of course helps with the acceleration. But the interesting thing is you can get to the top speed in 6th gear, and the other 2 gears pretty much like overdrive. So if you want to cruise, you can do that easily. 140 kilometers an hour in 8th gear reads out to just under 2000 RPM. I'm going to speak loudly now because the 911's engine is going to do the talking. That's the sound symposer. I know it's a turbo, but I can still hear some of the engine in the cabin, and that's so good.
250 kilometers an hour will come up easily, but you could say it is just a number.
Now the 911 isn't about raw horsepower, it's about communication, it's that sense of connection, it's about really feeling one with the machine. And on a track that I'd never driven on before, in a car that I had not driven before, very soon you started to get a feel for what it was doing, what it was telling you. It started getting fun, and I think that's what it's all about. Like right now, just going on the throttle, you can feel it shift just that little bit of a twitch from the rear. All of those small things, these sensations, is what makes the 911 special.
The suspension also feels more supple, and the optional rear wheel steering makes it more agile and more stable. But it isn't perfect.
Now the 8-speed PD game, compared to the old 7-speeder, this just feels like it's just a touch slower. The old gearbox felt telepathic. It was instantaneous, whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted it. This just makes you wait a little bit at times.
Yes, it is nitpicking, but Porsche is about perfection, so we aren't going to let that go. Just like the steering.
The steering wheel though, you get a good feel for what's happening at the front end, but that granularity has got softened further.
So the new 911 isn't perfect. Its gearbox and steering could do with a bit more emotion and urgency. But this new Porsche is devastatingly addictive. It is fierce in the way it grips the road. It excites in the way it accelerates, while being easier and safer to drive. It is more luxurious, more comfortable, and yes, better value too. So if you've been wanting a 911, well, with the 992, you wouldn't want to hold back.